Well, hello again, everybody. This is John Narzik, Trading Perspectives. As always, we have our good friends, Courtney Truss and Sam Clement. Y'all say hello.
How's it going?
Hey.
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Sam. Now, guys, I got to tell you, and I think we might have said this right before we turned on the mic, but if you were to take 3 random associates here at Oakworth Capital Bank and put them all in a room and start doing a podcast, you probably couldn't find another threesome that enjoys grocery shopping as much as the 3 of us do. I mean, I think
so true.
If I'm not mistaken, we're the primary grocery shoppers in our families.
Definitely.
Yes.
And so maybe Courtney doesn't like going to the grocery store, buying a bunch of Capri Suns and Juicy Juices and all that stuff, but you like to cook. Sam likes to cook. I like to cook. So I don't mind doing the grocery shopping. I might have told y'all last week I was at a particular grocery store. Pharmacy there had screwed up my prescription, so I was killing time going up and down the aisles waiting while they filled it up. And I also did a little shopping besides. And what I noticed, Courtney, were a lot of empty shelves, like we've talked about previously. And I also noticed when I'm holding a package of chicken thighs, just how expensive stuff has gotten. Now, I'd kind of noticed it beforehand, but when I'm holding up a 2-pound package of chicken thighs, Sam, and it's cost me close to $8, that's when all of a sudden I go, gee whiz, what's going on?
And that's not organic, because organic is even more expensive than that.
I mean, we can talk about how they organically grow chickens and all that stuff, and maybe on another podcast. But what I also noticed as well was this particular store typically has teams of people going up and down the aisles, stocking the shelves. There wasn't anyone doing that the other night. The only person I could find even remotely doing something like that was a nice young woman that was humming a tune while she was making sure that the quinoa packages were perfectly straightened. I didn't see anyone else putting the stuff on there, and I began to wonder whether or not if a huge increase of the problem with the supply and prices just in general has to do with there just aren't as many people out there at that aspect. I mean, producing and transportation and stocking shelves and all that stuff. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Well, the problem is it's such a snowball effect. You know, each part of inflation leads to worsening of the next part, which leads to worsening of the next part. And it's just, again, a snowball effect. And I think that's part of it. When companies' margins are getting tighter, they're going to try and increase those margins in any way possible. When people are getting extra stimulus checks or what have you, I mean, they're probably not going to be as excited to go back to work. There's a lot of causes, and they all kind of lead back to each other, and it's something that we are clearly not out of the woods yet with.
Yeah. And I guess it's like, what can we do to stick it to the man to help drive down the cost rather than continue to overbuy, fearing that it's not going to be available?
Courtney, one, I take exception about you saying that you're going to stick it to the man because we all know.
That is a saying.
John's the man.
Because I'm the man. No, in all seriousness, though, I mean, it did get me wondering the other night, what are some of the things that I could do? It's not that I'm not like sitting there worried about where my next meal's coming from, but no one likes huge increases at a generic grocery store. And then I'm looking around, I notice all those things which are relatively processed. I'm not talking about Kraft macaroni and cheese dinner or something like that, but you go to the fruit section, they'll have a package of cut up stuff. You cut up melon,
right, yep.
Cut up yellow onions, cut up celery, things that are prepackaged meals. The meat, which is already processed and it's boneless, skinless, or it's supposed to be trimmed to fat and all that things. I've noticed that people aren't doing as good a job doing all that stuff. And by the way, the prices of this stuff has gone up. I wonder if I could just save a little bit of money doing some of that stuff at home myself. What do you think?
I mean, I think you could. To me, the best place is kind of those big ticket items or the big purchases. Maybe because you're right. You can, and your people are paying more for those extra conveniences because those companies are paying more to have someone cut the fruit or all those things. But to me, it's the big ticket things. Inflation's called the silent killer, and I think that's a pretty applicable term, especially for what's going on right now, because it's hard to fully pinpoint it on one thing, because it really is a lot of things are going up. It's hard to really avoid it. So I think the best way when everything's going up is to cut out one or two things. So maybe it means, I don't know, not going to a concert, not taking a road trip or something, those kinds of things that cut out a decent chunk of the budget, and those things have been going up too.
But I think it's like the splurging items too, to your point, John.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, well, if it means that you have more prep before dinner because you've got to dice the onion rather than getting the pre-diced onion, or maybe you don't make the steaks, or you don't buy prime, or whatever that is each week. I mean, I know that we have definitely cut back on that, and I have looked more towards items that are not perishable. So if I buy something, like, can I make sure that it'll last as long as possible, so I'm not throwing things away each week? Whereas before, okay, it's $2, like, I can get over it. It's not a big deal if we don't eat this, but kind of getting ahead of it, I think, is important.
One of the things that Beth and I have done, really, ever since both the kids are out of the house, but increasingly now, is we used to probably spend a little bit too money doing the DoorDash or going out to eat or whatnot. It's Tuesday night. I don't feel like cooking. Well, let's go to Saul's,
Yeah.
or let's get CERN, or something like that sent to the house and all that stuff. We're not doing anywhere near as much of that. And I'm, maybe it's just we're getting old, but maybe it's just like, gee whiz, that kind of starts to add up. I'm not sitting there saying that I love going home every night and making a shepherd's pie or whatever it is that we're making, but little things like that. Well, I'm not really cheating myself. I'm not necessarily depriving myself of anything. I mean, who doesn't like a decent shepherd's pie except for some vegan or something like that? I mean, they're awesome. But I don't feel like I'm depriving myself, but at the same time, I am saving a little bit of money.
And that's what I'm getting at exactly. Because say one night of cooking in versus going out, that's going to save you what? $40 probably at a minimum, depending on how nice of a restaurant you go to. That $40 is more than you're going to save by going to the bargain brand of soft drinks, the uncut fruit, things like that. I mean, it's hard to make that up when in one swift decision you can cut $100 out of your monthly budget.
Yeah, I hadn't even been thinking that way, but I mean, you bring up a good point. Now, Courtney, what are some of the things that you're going to be cutting out of your budget, do you think?
I definitely think less perishable meat. Going
as
for
opposed to the
Lunchables?
as opposed to the meat that lasts forever, I think.
Yes.
Like Vienna sausages.
Yeah. And no, I mean, we've definitely leaned more towards having the, okay, we're going to have a hot dog instead of, maybe, I don't know, I mean, steak. Or we're not going to give our kids steak, at least, I mean, just kind of thinking through, like, little things like that.
Things are getting tough, aren't they?
It's not. I mean, it hasn't been drastic in our, like, lifestyle. But I do think I'm more aware of that. Or, just looking at the buy one, get one free. That's the only cereal that we're going to buy this week. So go down the aisle, and only if it has this little sticker in front of it is what you can get. Because it's $5 on, cereal that lasts for 2 breakfasts. We're not doing that. And that's really not even that expensive. But just those little adjustments can add up. But
see, I would rather, if I'm having to cut stuff out, and I think everyone is focused on this to some extent, I'd rather say those 2 extra meals we go out to eat a month at nice restaurants, let's maybe cut that into one, and the other we go to somewhere a little more casual kind of thing. I mean, because that's a thing that is so easy to get, like we were saying, $100+ couple $100. I mean, depending on how frequently you're going to these things, and still get,
Well, that's the crazy thing about it. Depending on the restaurant where you go to, I mean, a nice meal out, if you go to one of the fancier restaurants here in town, like you said, it's not real difficult to get to $100.
No, it's hard not to.
A couple of entrees and a couple glasses of wine and a tip. Yeah, I mean, $100. Yeah, you're sailing through that. And if it's a decent time and you have a good time, you with Alex and you with Hannah and me with Beth, if you have a good time, you're not really going to think about that money all that much.
Yeah.
it's worth it, yeah.
However, when you go to the grocery store and your bill's $200, you're bowing up and prancing around going, what the hell's going on here? It was just $160 last month.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. And that's what's so strange about it. It's kind of where your priorities are. You notice that stuff at the grocery store because that is that inelastic stuff. Mm-hmm. That stuff you have to buy, as opposed to the stuff that you want to buy. You rarely begrudge yourself the stuff that you want to buy. You worry about that. But the stuff that you have to buy, when that goes up in price, that's when your Irish starts getting up. Courtney, your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I would like to cut back on, not necessarily for myself, but just as a household, is alcohol, because that also has gotten very expensive. And I would tell
children, I mean, you were telling me about your children.
you got to watch them.
Yeah.
Getting to that age.
Yeah. But no, I mean,
it's Capri Suns.
One of our
5% ABV.
One of our good friends, he cut out alcohol for over a year. And based off the money, and I don't know what this says about his amount of drinking or just what he was drinking and the cost of it, But he was able to save enough to make a down payment on a house, and so.
Oh my gosh!
I'm not saying it was 20%.
Dude's got
That's either a small house or a big liver.
Yeah, but you think about that. If you really broke it down,
Who are your friends?
and you think about every time you go out, how much you spend on. I mean, it can.
Well, going out's the big part of drinking too.
Oh
You
my
know,
gosh,
that. I was going to even say that too about when we go out to eat. Okay, maybe I'll have a drink beforehand and not get one there, and because the drinks going out, I mean that costs a arm and a leg.
That's
I mean,
a wallop.
getting beer and wine at the grocery store.
It's different. Yes,
It's different,
true.
but it's the going out, the food after you go out, and it ends up being
Food after you go out.
I mean, that's
Food after you have
Fourth
dinner.
meal.
the
Yeah,
Waffle
no, that's-
House.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we're at different stages. That is a trading perspectives. I did used to do that. Now it's after I eat, it's time to go to sleep. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. So I hear what you're saying, but I can't imagine having saved that much money on booze to buy a house.
Well, what do we do as a society to help drive down inflation?
Well, you mentioned eating hot dogs as opposed to steak. Now, if that's the case, don't call them hot dogs because you feel as though you're cheating yourself.
Yes.
Franks.
I would say Franks,
Brats.
but I was thinking more tube steaks. Tube steaks
Tube steaks.
would make you feel a lot better. But as a society, I mean, it really is. If most people listening to this podcast, those people were truly honest with themselves, they probably piss money away somehow. I mean,
Everyone does.
It might not be exactly what you piss away. In your opinion, might not be the same thing in mine or all that stuff, but all of us have some definitely discretionary expenditures that we could easily do away with.
True. I mean, and I think now, especially with online purchases, it makes it so easy, and it's like, oh, it didn't really count. But like when you're at the store and you have to like put the credit card in when you see the balance, or they say it out loud, I mean, it kind of is like right there in your face. But you're like, oh, well, if I did 4 Target, drive ups, and they were all about $25. Oh, it's not that bad, but they add up quick.
And again, going back to just the term silent killer, I mean, going to the store is the thing where if everything's going up 25 cents, I mean, there's a good chance I don't notice it when I'm just going and grabbing the stuff I know I need.
Yeah.
But if you're getting a week or 2 weeks worth of groceries, 25, 50 cents an item going up, that's how you get to that 30, 40, 50 bucks more. It's like, holy cow, I didn't do anything differently.
Yeah.
I didn't notice the price on any of the items being that differently, but they're cumulatively all adding up. And that's hard to combat. I mean, like John said, that's the stuff with inelastic demand. I mean, you need to eat.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people, obviously, like, their income is not changing, and they still have those basic needs and that basic necessity. And it's like, if they might not have the fat to trim, that you're talking about. Maybe they feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck just to buy the bare necessities that are getting more expensive. And it's, so, we always think of kind of probably like, our situation, but there are people who aren't as fortunate. And it's like, how do we help make it affordable for everybody?
That's the problem, is inflation is extremely regressive. I mean,
Yes.
the more money you spend on things with inelastic demand that you have to have, the more it's going to impact you. If you don't have things you can cut out, if you're at the lower end of the economic scale, I mean, you don't have a lot of these discretionary things. You talk about throwing money away. A lot of people don't have those kinds of things, and so their budget is really getting crammed, and then they're starting to have to talk about cutting things out that probably shouldn't need to cut out.
Right. Like, you don't want people buying cat food instead of human food because that's all they can afford.
Oh, that's a little extreme, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever opened up a can of potted meat food product or Vienna sausages?
I personally have not.
I have.
And what is that delicious delicatessen that you have on your desk?
Pork brains with milk gravy.
There are all kinds of ways to get around it. But in all seriousness, though, I mean, as this continues to go on, as prices continue to go up, although household balance sheets in aggregate, according to the government and according to everywhere I've read, household balance sheets are in about as healthy a shape as they've been in a very long period of time. Societal wealth has gone up dramatically over the last 18 months. All of that stuff, even so, when grocery items go up, when prices at the pump go up, when all these things that we have to buy, these inelastic goods and services, when they go up, if people in our situations are talking about it and talking about ways to cut items out of their budget, there got to be a bunch of people out there that are really kind of scratching their head going, what's next? And Courtney, you're right. I mean, it might not be cat food, but it might be for the first time in someone's life, they go visit the food pantry at the local church and all that type of thing. So this is something that it's serious, and it will go away at some point, but unfortunately I think we're going to have to experience a little bit more pain.
And you're right. I mean, it's a, we can talk about cutting out extra meals or going to choice instead of prime, but for a large percentage of this country, I mean, it's a serious, serious issue, and something that, I mean, it's hard to really grasp, I think.
So people who aren't as knowledgeable about how inflation works, right? And I'm not going to say that I was well versed in it probably before we've always been talking about it more recently, but a lot of people will say, well, for people who need the money, if the price is more expensive, then we need to give them more money. I know y'all were talking about California. I mean, kind of based off your knowledge, I mean, how does that affect inflation if we just pump more money into the system?
Well, it seems counterintuitive to me. Now, it seems nice, hey, things are costing more, then here, take it. There's only two ways to drive down prices. You can either increase supply or you can decrease demand. Giving people money to go buy products isn't decreasing demand, and
right.
nor is it increasing supply. Matter of fact, you could arguably say if they've got more money to buy goods and services, all they're going to do is increase the demand of it. So giving people money to buy gas because gas has gotten so expensive is just going to make them buy more gas, or at least the same amount. And as a result, supply hasn't changed. Demand remains relatively constant, if not goes up. So it's not going to work to drive prices down.
And I think I completely agree with John. And going back to it being regressive, inflation being regressive, I mean, I think some possible sort of tax breaks on the very lower end could work. I mean, because we're going to start hiking rates. That's going to impact demand. I mean, but it's hard when some people inflation impacts a little because they're not investing and saving as much, and then other people are cutting out everyday items. So I think that's part of the difficulty in figuring out how to accomplish this without going into a recession where, again, the lower end of the economic spectrum is, again, hurt the most.
Well, the thing that's so crazy about it all, Courtney, is, man, here California's talking about how much are they going to give them?
$400 person.
Currently, California has the highest excise tax, if it is an excise tax, on gasoline of any state in the country. I think it's 51.4 cents per gallon.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that adds up pretty quickly. I mean, if you buy a 20-gallon tank, that's about, I think my car is a 16-gallon tank, paying $8 in tax, Sacramento's not talking about getting rid of that. And then the federal government has 16 or 18 cents, and then a lot of localities, municipalities, counties, they throw on their own tax.
Are they just trying to push people to go electric? Is that why they have such high taxes on gas?
Well, it's one of those things. They tax something that's a relatively inelastic product. People have always needed it. So if you have tax something that people are going to buy, that's the reason why cigarette taxes are so high. There's a reason why alcohol prices are so high. I mean, that's just, say, sin taxes, we don't want people to use them, but they never make it so expensive where they're prohibitive. Just make it expensive enough where the people that really want the product will use it. So, if government would really cared that much about it, they would say, no, we're not going to collect any more taxes on these inelastic goods and services. However, that would obviously drive down tax revenue. But then again, it might drive down tax revenue, but then it could mean that we're not spending as much money on giving people $400 a month, and it might actually be a net positive.
Maybe it lowers interest rates, and then we can service our debt cheaper.
I kind of like that idea. What do you think about that, Courtney?
Oh, that sounds too deep for me.
So Sam, is there anything that you have been targeting for yourself? I'm not going to be spending money like this.
I think it's the eating out. Not that we're excessive on it, but again, it's an easy one to point at and say one less of these a month saves us a good bit of money.
Courtney, how about you?
Do you think that would be well received in your household?
I think it's mutually agreed upon.
Yeah.
That would not be mutually agreed upon in my household. I think it's just not picking. It'll probably be more generic goods, and then also cutting back on the things that I know we don't really need. It won't be walking down the aisle and this looks good, I'm going to put it in. It's just going to be more structured. If it's not on the list, it's not going in the cart.
Does that include your creamer?
The creamer is always on
Sausage.
the list, John.
Okay, I got you. The sausage that your family
always
likes?
on the list.
All right, there you go. And for me, probably continued, maybe not going out to eat as much, or if we do,
No DoorDash?
DoorDash is probably where we kill ourselves. There's no reason why we can't cook at the house. I like to cook. That's not a bad cook. There's no reason why we can't do that. But, you know, that is certainly one area that we can cut out. And that's, we'll continue to do it. So, all right. Well, guys, thank you all so much for listening. We always love to hear from you all. So if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please, by all means, let us know. You can always reach us by dropping us an email at tradingperspectives@oakworth.com. Either that, or you can leave us a review on the podcast outlet of your choice. Also, if you're interested in reading more or hearing more of what we have to say or how we think, by all means, please go to oakworth.com and take a look underneath the Thought Leadership tab for all kinds of interesting information. With that, I'm going to give you guys last chance on this very interesting topic.
That's all I got.
That's it.
That's all I've got today, too. Y'all take care.